What's up, everybody? Welcome to BioS3 Raw TV. Today we're going to talk a little bit about more of the carb is a carb things. I'm getting people constantly asking, carb is a carb, calorie is a calorie. Now, I do not believe a calorie is a calorie, hands down. I mean, calories are fucking different. Fat, protein, and carbs. You cannot eat all fats and fucking stay healthy and be fucking shredded. It just doesn't work that way. A calorie is not a calorie. It's not about calories in, calories out. Now, I think a lot of confusion happens when we start generalizing, and when a lot of people don't really understand what they're talking about, they just start regurgitating things that they've heard or read or seen that, you know, in a magazine somewhere, and they go, okay, this makes sense to me, so I'm going to run with this. Now, is a carb a carb? Now, here's, you know, that actual statement is a yes and a no. Now, each different type of carbohydrate, whether it's complex carb or a fiber carb or a simple carb, taken by itself gets a different response in the human body hormonally. Okay, they get broken down different ways, they get used different ways. More specifically, faster or slower. Okay, that's the main difference. They get broken down and used faster or slower. Now, for the average person that I get coming to me asking me about this, no, it's very important that you have certain carbs at certain times and you avoid certain carbs at certain times to make your weight loss goals. Now, some people say, Jerry, it doesn't fucking matter. Well, these people are still fucking fat, so obviously it does matter because they've been following your calories in, calories out bullshit, carb is a carb, and it's not working for them. That's why they're on here. That's why they're watching what I'm talking about right now, and that's why everybody's tuned in going, what the fuck is he going to talk about now? Because you know what? It doesn't work for everybody. Now, why? Why does it not work for everybody the way a carb is a carb? Now, there's a genetic factor, which is genetics, which that makes sense. But metabolism, genetic metabolism is how fast you break certain things down. Certain people break down certain carbs faster than others. It's just a fact. I don't know why it happens. It's part of biology. It's part of biochemistry. It's just, that's how it works. So, those people could take a complex carb or a sugar carb. Now, depending on if the food that you're combining with it, macronutrient-wise, if you're combining certain proteins with certain carbohydrates and certain fats, you're going to get now another different response of food. So now, again, you could technically turn a sugar carb, okay, simple carb, into a complex carb by adding, not technically, but you can get it to digest the same way by adding certain foods to it. Now, where did this whole like a carb is a carb thing come from? Now, there are definitely people that it doesn't matter what kind of carb they take in, it all works the same. Now, who are these people? Okay, again, genetically, these people who are very thin have a tendency to break down food very quickly, very lean. These people with the fast metabolisms, they can pretty much eat whatever kind of carbohydrates, whether it's bread or bananas or fucking table sugar or whatever, and it does the same thing to their body. However, that's not who's asking me. If you're watching this, you're not one of them. Or you may be one of them watching this going, why is this for me, but it doesn't work for anyone else? But anyways, there was a guy that I knew. His name was Bob. This is going back to when I was a competitive teenager in bodybuilding. And Bob was natural, and Bob was shredded. He was a Masters competitor. He was always super tight. He was always winning the Masters things, divisions. And I remember having a conversation with him about diet. And he said, you know, he goes, I don't think this is like 20 years ago. He goes, I don't think the body can tell, you know, different carbohydrates. I don't think it can. And I'm sitting there going, I said, okay, well, why? And he said, well, if I eat, you know, sugar in my coffee, because I don't see any difference than if I ate a banana. He's like, well, if I eat a sweet potato, I don't see any difference than if I ate, you know, an orange. He goes, it just doesn't make any difference. Now, the kicker is this guy would go zero carb for 8 to 10 weeks, and then when he had a quote-unquote refeed, he would have these carbohydrates. Now, the body in a very depleted state is in survival mode. It will do things differently than the average person who's on the fucking couch that's just barely exercising, barely fucking getting any movements at all during the fucking day. It's different. The body works different. It's not the same. So yes, in this guy Bob's instance, it didn't matter whether it was glucose, sucrose, it could have been fucking dextrose, it could have been fucking fruit, it could have been anything, and his body being depleted enough would have used that anyway. It wouldn't matter what kind of carbohydrate he put in it. But he had to prime his body beforehand. You know, unless he genetically, his metabolism was that fast, his body was primed beforehand to act like that. And now a lot of people who are very consistent, and I see this all the time, if you're consistent with your training, and I mean, you're not fucking missing days. You know, I mean, I haven't missed more than 2 days in fucking 20 years in the gym that weren't scheduled. If you're consistent in the fucking gym, and you're doing your cardio, and there's another thing, people, oh, no cardio, Jay. You're doing your cardio, let's, for shit's sake, say cardiovascular conditioning for your heart to be healthier. And you're eating a fairly clean diet most of the time, and you do an IFOM fitting in your junk, yes, you're not going to see that much of a difference in the different carbohydrates you take in. But that's not, you can't run around preaching to people who don't do what you do to do the same thing. It doesn't have the same results. And the end result is these people are getting frustrated and getting pissed off and being like, well, I suck, and beating themselves up because their body doesn't work the way that yours does. And they're like, well, why the fuck doesn't it work for me? And then you're like, well, what the fuck? It works. You're doing something wrong. And what's happening is you're having these battles back and forth, and then they come to me and go, Jerry, what the fuck's going on? Here's the situation. And I said, okay, well, you're 30% body fat. You're eating 450 grams of carbohydrates. You're eating too much. That's what's happening, okay? Well, so-and-so, in his theory, blah, blah, blah. And I was okay, well, is it working? No. Okay, so if it's not working, then you can continue to try it. I mean, that's your prerogative. You can continue to push and see what happens, but you've already gained 20 pounds of fat. So you want to gain another 20 pounds so that you have to diet 60 pounds of fat off so that you can get to your goal. That doesn't fucking make any sense. So it is very important to understand why certain carbs work with certain people and what has happened to their body, activity levels. I mean, it even goes down to fucking enzyme levels. Some people have more enzymes to break down certain things than others genetically. And I think that's a big part of metabolism. It hasn't been tested, so don't fucking jump up, hey, Jerry, they fucking enzymes. No, it hasn't been tested. They haven't tested fucking 1,000 people and said, enzymatically, what kind of different enzymes do you have for breaking down food in different ways? They haven't done any of this shit. So there's so much stuff that's it's unscoped as far as, the way the body works. They've got a lot of basic stuff down, a lot of non-basic stuff down. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff missing because there's just no need for that research. They don't give a fuck about how many enzymes someone's body has that for some reason makes them break down a sweet potato differently than this. They haven't done a fucking study on actually they have done starvation studies. Done starvation studies to see what happens to metabolism. And then it's just like any other, contest prep diet. When you come off of it, you show all that food in your body, you grow like a motherfucker for a certain period of time, and then you gain fat. So the body soaks everything up and fuck like a sponge. It just uses everything no matter what it is because it's in that survival mode. It doesn't want to die. And then once it gets out of that part where your body fat is high enough to where you're not in danger anymore, then it gains fat to say, okay, now there's another famine going to be coming later on, so let's add some fat to have for that later. So it all comes down to survival and what your body wants to do, but there definitely is a certain way where a carb wouldn't matter which kind you took in, but that's not for the everyday person. If you're doing that now and it's not working for you, then fucking change it. BioStraining@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.biostraining.com is the blog, and where this is the carb is not a carb depending on the way it works bicep. If that makes any sense, and we're out.